watching Doug in Exile.
You know, when you get snowed by your government, you smell a rat. You start to smell something. And Dick Van Dyke, one of America's most beloved actors and oldest living actors, weighs in on the Supreme Court and Jack Smith going after Trump. I think this stuff is interesting. To me, not only it shows how sharp his mind is, but he brings up an interesting point of, do you feel someone is being manipulated? Are we being manipulated? Welcome to Doug in Exile. This is where the happy patriots are. And of course, we have an open invitation to Dick Van Dyke to come on this show. And for you guys to go subscribe to him too. He's right here on YouTube. He just kind of goofs around and says some things, but I've always found him to be very funny and very interesting. Loved him in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Loved him in Mary Poppins, all right, as the lovable Bert, you know, who does his chimney dancing. He was also great in Night at the Museum as one of the big villains. That's how my kids know him, is through Night at the Museum with Mickey Rooney. He plays a couple of villains. But let's listen to Dick Van Dyke weigh in on politics, which I think is kind of cool.
I'm Dick Van Dyke. You may remember me. I used to fall down a lot. On purpose.
He was known as this bumbling guy, a very physical, animated actor. It's one of the things I like about him. I like the guys that really he can sing, he can dance, he can act. Very interesting to me. And now at the tail end of his whole career, he does these little spots and he starts thinking out loud. And this is the kind of stuff that Hollywood does not want you to do. They're like, hey, keep your mouth shut. Do not weigh in on politics. But I always want to encourage my fellow Americans, be bold, be outspoken. If you don't use this right of free speech, you will lose it. So it's important that we protect his free speech also.
I don't speak up a lot, but there's something on my mind that I wanted to talk about. You know, our Supreme Court has delayed any decision about a president's immunity.
Okay, and he's also sharp as a tack to be this up on politics, that he knows the Supreme Court. By the way, the reason why they're being delayed is largely because of Jack Smith has come in, gummed up, convoluted, tried to push and rush this case forward, that it ends up creating a pushback by the Supreme Court to delay it because they have to be so thorough. You know, thoroughness slows things down. Now, here's Laura Loomer, who had one of Trump's J6 lawyers on her show. I find this is interesting too. She's hinting at Ketanji Brown Jackson colluding with the White House and Jack Smith.
Well, you know, Laura, there was something else that Dreeben said that I don't think has been reported anywhere yet that almost blew our minds. Dreeben admitted at one point that some of his arguments had been cleared with the Solicitor General of the United States. So that's one of the highest ranking members in the Biden Department of Justice.
And at the same time, they have stalled everything so that Donald Trump's path back to the White House is pretty clear now. And when that happened, both of the cable network stations printed headlines, corrupt. Our Supreme Court is corrupt.
And look, Dick Van Dyke is going, why are these connected things happening? So you have the two cable networks implying the Supreme Court is corrupt. You have unprecedented Department of Justice coming in and saying they cleared arguments of Jack Smith's prosecutor lawyer, which is weird. The idea that they'd be cleared with like Merrick Garland. Why is Merrick Garland involved in this thing? So some kind of permission structure is going on. And Dick Van Dyke is just going, I kind of see something weird. Here's Laura Loomer implying that this is Brown Jackson on the Supreme Court possibly coordinating with Jack Smith. Which
is why I led the interview with the question about whether you think Ketanji Brown Jackson and some of the more left-leaning justices appointed by Joe Biden on the court are directly coordinating with Jack Smith.
And then nothing, silence. Not another word has been spoken about it by anybody. They dropped the subject as if they'd been squelched.
Now, Dick Van Dyke, we don't believe in conspiracies at all, but he's only saying, look, they went from saying the Supreme Court was corrupt, and now the mainstream media completely drops the topic. Now, one of two things happens. He says it's as if it's been squelched. So number one is it got squelched. By who? I don't know. It could be by the powers that be, some big dark conspiracy. Could have been squelched. The other explanation is that we pour out so much news that just, the next stimulating topic is already being run through the news. You know what I mean? So like the Supreme Court and the delayment of everything with Trump and everything, that's like last week, and we're waiting for the new thing to drop with that case. So I hear him on that. It is weird that these headlines are picked up and then suddenly dropped.
At the same time, for some reason, our college students, out of the blue, became very concerned about what's happening in the Middle East.
Then come the college riots come up. Now, Dick Van Dyke is saying, what if they're connected? I don't know how they would be connected. I think it's very interesting, but it's entirely possible the news is saying, look over here, instead of they should be focusing on, say, the Supreme Court with Trump because he has a clear path forward. And then suddenly the big news, of course, across all the networks, which we've been covering, is all the Palestinian protests on our campuses that are just a complete socialist wreck right now, a disastrous socialist wreck. But they were violent, and we do know that they were funded, by the way. We do know that these different outbreaks on all these different colleges were funded. We did a video yesterday on Joe Scarborough saying these appear to be outside actors, meaning outside people paid to come in and dial a protest. So it could be deliberate. And Dick Van Dyke is only saying, I smell something.
I'm beginning to feel a little manipulated somehow. Think about it, will you? Thanks.
Do you feel manipulated? Because I feel it. I can't explain it. It doesn't mean it's true either, by the way. My feelings can be very wrong. I think everyone this is what happens when social media and the news and the White House and our culture, everyone's pulling strings, that you start feeling like, you know what? Feels kind of string pulley. That's all he's saying. Doesn't feel organic, right? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Is it being orchestrated? Is it being conducted? As Dick Van Dyke says, are we being manipulated? I'm Doug in Exile.